Hello and thank you for joining us. My name is Michael Burdell. We have a very special guest with us today, Barbara Thompson, the Superintendent of the Montgomery Public Schools. And Madam Superintendent, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thanks for inviting me.
You're still relatively new here, less than 1 year, so I guess you're still in the honeymoon phase. Tell us how you're enjoying Montgomery thus far.
Well, for me, it's sort of like coming back home because I was born in Georgia. So I'm enjoying the climate, the food, and the people. It's actually been nonstop since I arrived.
It always has.
So I'm really enjoying the transitioning back to the South.
Now, you were in Wisconsin for the past 2 decades.
That's right.
Going to go out on a limb and guess that the winters here were a little bit milder than what you grew accustomed to.
That's not an exaggeration. I kind of laughed when we ended up closing schools because everybody took this very seriously. We were getting snowflakes and closing. And in my last school district, I closed schools when it was a -45 below zero temperature and a -65 below wind chill. So a significant difference.
Yeah, indeed. Well, we just don't have the snow removal, and the students aren't used to traveling or waiting for buses out in the cold. But after the winter that we've just had, the 3rd coldest on record, we might be inching closer. Tell us about some of the challenges, I guess, that you're experiencing as superintendent of the Montgomery Public Schools.
Well, I would say the largest challenge is actually proration. In my former position in state, we didn't have proration.
Now, what is proration for the people who aren't familiar with that term?
Proration is a term that the governor decides that he's going to initiate during the school year, and it means that you have to cut your budget by that amount. Last year, we had a 7.5% proration cut, which for us was an additional $11.4 million. And in the last 2 years, we've ended up cutting $30 million from our budget. That's very difficult because often that information comes mid-year or during the year. So you have to make adjustments. And that's difficult when you have a budget that is 85% personnel and people are already under contract. So it's a process that's a new one for us because when you think you have a budget at the beginning of the year, somewhere during that year you still can be told that you're going to lose even more money.
Sure, so that would be like my family expecting for me to have my full salary for the year, and then the boss telling me, oops, we're going to hold back 10%
That's right.
for the rest of the year.
But you still have all your ongoing expenditures.
Sure.
You haven't lost any of those. So the trick is to figure out how to do that given that you keep losing money and you keep using fund balance reserves.
Now, if salaries can't be touched, then where do you make up that gap? How do you slash the budget for the rest of the fiscal year?
Well, we've cut it to the bone, basically. We've, don't have materials and supplies, textbooks are on hold, things that we might do with maintenance are on hold, just anything that's operational. You have to look at what you can do. Some of the positions that we would have hired, we aren't hiring, that were scheduled to be hired, that were posted, we are delaying and looking at the organizational chart to see if we really need them. So it really makes you reorganize the workload on every single position that you have.
This seems like perhaps an obvious question, but does student achievement suffer when you've got proration, and how do you and the rest of your staff manage to minimize the deterioration of education?
Right. Well, I think our teaching staff, I have to give them kudos. They work very, very hard. And many of them have used money from their own pockets to bring in materials and supplies. And we're still trying to meet the standards and use technology and everything else to meet those needs that kids have. And the textbooks, it's difficult when you aren't renewing textbooks and you aren't doing things that are usually considered a foundation. So we've had to be creative in terms of how we're teaching, how we're using materials, how we're using paper. We're using more overhead kinds of things like the smart boards. So the usage of paper, that old traditional thing, we're not doing anymore. But it's really, really difficult, particularly in terms of if we're raising class sizes. That really gets to be a challenge. And at this point, that's probably what we're going to have to start looking at even more.
Does this heighten your dependence or reliance on PTA groups? Are you asking for families to help close that gap or to be supportive in some way? Or can that really be effective if you're losing millions of dollars?
Well, it is. It's helpful because PTAs and parent groups have been helpful. We also had a campaign this year with the mayor and the county executive for Tools for School in terms of learning materials. Every little bit helps. And I would say the community has really supported us in terms of donations of paper and markers and materials, because we have a significant number of students in our district who are on free and reduced lunch. So they're coming from families who can't afford to dig out in their pockets and give us money because they're surviving themselves.
Sure. Now, when proration strikes, do districts get a pass in terms of the accountability measures that they have to reach? No.
No, they do not. Districts do not get a pass in terms of accountability. We're still held to those very high standards. So it really is a struggle to offer everything that you're offering, given the cuts that you're going to have, but you don't know you're going to have them. So some of the programs you might put in place to help with those needs that you have, those gaps, they might be the first to be cut. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, of course.
So it really is a balancing act, because once you find out what you need, you put the programs in place, those people are probably your newest non-tenured teachers, so they're cut first. So it really is a balancing act.
Now, I don't know that we're unique in our difficulties. I keep reading in the media about other states slashing their teaching positions as well. How would you characterize where we are in relation to other school systems here in Alabama, and how Alabama is comparing to other states in the U.S.?
Well, I would just say Montgomery 2 years ago, when proration started, we had a very healthy fund balance. We had about a month's operating balance, about $18.5 million.
Just 1 month's operating, that was your cushion?
That was our cushion. That was our cushion. And many districts in the state didn't have that in Alabama. So when proration hit, we could use those monies to fill in that gap. That dropped down to $8.5 million at the end of last year, 2009. This year, we're projecting that we will have no fund balance left. So we won't have that balance. And with no additional federal funds coming in, no fund reserves, it will have a devastating impact. And I think that's what you're seeing around the country, because education hasn't been funded at the level it needs to be funded, but we still have all these mandates. So you can't mandate on one hand and not fund fully on the other. And right now, the nation is in that quandary. You know, that's why I think there's some additional stimulus money, some race to the top monies, but the only problem with those is the stimulus money is a 2-year thing.
Sure.
So once you do that and you staff, it's gone. So it's kind of a one-time fix. We need a permanent fix for education, because we have to compete against countries that we didn't even think about. India and China are investing heavily in education, and our kids are going to have to compete globally.
Exactly. It's not just trying to beat the guy in the next block. You're trying to beat people on other continents.
That's
and,
right.
And we're not quite doing all that we need to do if we want to stay competitive.
That's right.
Are there extracurricular programs that are treasured and cherished that might see their existence in jeopardy if?
Well, I think the sports program is something that makes, and arts and all those other programs that we have, and band, choir, musicals, those are extracurricular things that we have in place. Whenever you start tightening your budget, those are the first things that are on the chopping block that get cut, because they aren't part of the standards that are required in that core section. And my belief is that's what makes our students whole students. It creates those people that go out into the world that are going to be able to enjoy the quality of life. If we cut away those things, they aren't going to have those kinds of experiences. Sports is more than just athletics, for example. It's teaming, it's leadership. Kids learn a lot from that. You know, arts, music, you learn a lot from that. And research says when you are involved in those things, it actually improves student achievement.
Sure.
So it's not just an isolated, feel-good kind of extra out there. It actually adds to what's going on in the learning environment and achievement.
Now, in spite of the dire financial circumstances the district is in, there are some bright spots. 2 new schools that opened back in August.
Wilson and Carr were 2 beautiful schools that opened. They're going to offer kids a learning environment that's incredible. You know, I couldn't be more happy. That happened as a result of collaboration with the city and the county and the school district, and they're in growing communities. And the other part about that is that we're growing. We were up about 300 students this year. So the other bright spot is that it looks like we are attracting families and students, and that's something you always want.
Now, what do you attribute that to? Because for the last few years, we'd actually seen the student population maybe make slight declines or stay steady, and then to see a growth indicates a degree of is it public confidence, or is it the economy where people are saying we can no longer afford the private school tuition, so now we're going to send our kids to public schools?
A little of both. I think we ended up, you know, whenever you build a new school, I think you attract families back
Of course.
because it has 21st century skills and state-of-art technology. So that was one reason. And the other reason was clearly the economy. I think many parents who had their kids in private school were rethinking and saying, I can't afford this, and we're going to give the public schools a try. And we don't want to lose those families. So we're putting things in place that we think are going to keep them in the public schools.
And you're going to be opening new schools in this upcoming year, is that correct?
We are. We're looking forward to opening new schools in the southern tier, which is an undeveloped area of our county that is has been untapped. And we also are looking at a new high school in the eastern part of the city. And next year we have 2 new schools that we're opening that are physically being completed now. One is Carver High School, which is going to be a phenomenal school, and the other is Bellingrath Middle School. So we're really pleased about those 2.
Now, the Carver construction site is right there by I-65, so as people drive by every day, they get to see this magnificent place of learning for the future. And
right.
I also think that perhaps people traveling from Birmingham to Mobile will start to have a better feeling about us when they see this magnificent school there.
Yes. It's absolutely, actually I had my first walkthrough today, so I'm pretty excited to see the inside.
Now, that school is going to have an academy for automotive instruction, 2 of them.
2, actually, hospitality and tourism and advanced manufacturing. And advanced manufacturing, because we're teaming with Trenum, actually looks at the whole manufacturing area along with robotics. It's that full extension. So it's not your traditional advanced manufacturing that people might think about. But the exciting part is because we're pairing with Trenum, our kids can also end up getting some credits there. So that dual enrollment option is pretty exciting.
Sure. Well, I want to talk about that, but also don't want to quite leave the topic of new schools. You mentioned possibly a new high school out east, and that's something that a lot of Montgomeryans have been clamoring for years. Any idea where it would be located at this point?
No, I think we're looking at that. There are some issues to consider when you're looking at location in terms of access and water and sewage that we want to consider, because those are expensive if they're not in place.
Sure.
So we need to look at some of those things. We also need to consider the land. You're talking about 45 to 50 acres, and the east side is growing rapidly. So where are you going to find that? Hopefully we get some help with that in terms of the land. And we're trying to look at, you know, we have the new schools on Ray Thornton and Wilson that way. If those roads are going to be opened up, that gives us more access. What that means, an example I would give you is JD and Danley.
Okay.
That's a situation where the high school is right across the street from elementary.
Sure.
Terrible access for us.
Okay.
So we want to avoid those kinds of situations in the future. But we're looking at land on the east side.
I don't want to hold you to a firm date, but is there a target date? Can we say 5 years down the line, or is it it's too shaky
I'm
at this point?
thinking 2 years down the line.
Wow.
I'm really on the fast track for this, because we don't want to lose people who would be moving into that community because there isn't a high school there.
Sure.
You know, I think we have Wilson Elementary, Carr, Blunt is full. We just have tremendous growth, and we really need a high school. Our high schools that we currently have, you know, Lee and JD are full. Carver, we're growing.
Sure. How many students would be enrolled at the new high school?
I would say initially around 800 or 900, with probably potential to go to around 11 or 1,200.
And it would be a 9 to 12, I guess.
Yes, a 9 to 12.
Now that leads us, or segues into the next topic. The school system is contemplating a reconfiguration of the middle school, junior high school grades. Why is that a good idea?
Student learning. It's really based on data for student learning. You know, all of our statistics and data tells us that we lose kids between 8th and 9th grade. Our 9th graders are basically, their GPAs, they're just killing themselves. When they're in a 7 through 9 configuration, they don't understand they're earning Carnegie credits.
Okay.
So when they
Now,
move,
what are Carnegie credits?
Carnegie credits are the credits that you need in Alabama to graduate.
Okay.
And you start earning those in 9th grade. Up until that point, you're not earning credits that count towards your GPA.
Sure.
And those are the credits that when you are applying for college, they look at those to determine if you have a 2.5 or 3.0, and you have to earn them in certain categories, you know, so many English, so many math. So they're requirements. And our 9th graders invariably at the schools that are not attached in the 9th grade, their GPAs are low. The two and the graduation rates are drastically different.
Sure.
For example, I'll just give you an example. The graduation rate at Lanier is 92%, 9 through 12 school. JD, 10 through 12, 69%. Huge, huge difference.
92 versus 69.
Yes.
And the inclusion of the 9th grade is the determining variable.
Yes. And what happens is, and let me explain why it's so important, those 9th graders have already killed their GPA, and
Sure.
you know when you go to college and you have a bad freshman year, it takes you the next 2 or 3 years to really bring that back up. And that's really what's happening. We have kids who aren't taking 9th grade seriously because they're in a 7-9 configuration.
Okay.
So when they get to 9th grade, they bombed that 9th grade year. And then it becomes so difficult to catch up with what you're doing with your GPA. And it limits what you can do. And then, of course, you have kids who say, I can't do this, and you have the dropout factor that comes into that. So it's really a snowball effect. And we've really looked at that in terms of the kids who have those GPAs and what happens in the configuration. But I just wanted to point you out, that's a drastic, drastic difference.
Indeed.
And that's true for Lee, and it's true for Carver. Same kinds of statistics, about 89% for Carver graduation and about 70% for Lee. Drastic differences.
Now, as we look at what other school systems in peer communities and around us are doing, are they also making the transition to the middle school concept, or are they there already?
Well, a couple things. One, most of our surrounding neighborhoods have already gone through a 9 through 12. Most of our surrounding counties are already in the middle school concept. We have 13 middle schools in 4 different configurations. We have 6-8, we have 7-9, we have 7-8, and K-8. In terms of delivery of instruction, if you think about it from a business perspective, and you were trying to train your people working for you, having all those different configurations would make it difficult. The same is true for instruction. We have the same dilemma. We have 4 different configurations. And that's evolved over time, primarily, I suspect, because of space issues.
Sure.
But the middle school concept is a very different concept than the junior high. It means that the teachers in that 6-8 configuration will be certified in that content area, and that's different. Teachers can be K-8 and have other certification. In a middle school, we're looking for teachers who are actually trained and certified in math.
Sure.
They're trained in science. So when those kids enter high school, you've been taught by someone
Who's a specialist.
who's a specialist. Not saying that if I were trained through K-8 that I wouldn't be able to teach science, but probably I had an area that was a strength area for me, and maybe it was reading. I can still teach science, but I won't teach it with the same vigor and knowledge as someone whose concentration was science. And so we're trying to make sure that we give the kids those kinds of teachers in the classroom because we think that's going to be important for them in terms of the skills that we are trying to make sure they have in middle schools. Middle schools are where we are testing scores falls down.
Sure.
And we really want people who have a knowledge base that is pretty extensive and pretty in-depth because you're going to engage kids in a different way than if you're someone who, let's say social studies was your area of strength and you're trying to teach science. You can teach science because you're certified to teach it, but it won't be the same as that other person.
Right, right.
So
Indeed.
we're making that connection, plus we're going to create small learning communities. The 9th graders are going to have small learning academies, which means they're going to kind of be separated from the other students, and the same thing for 6th grade.
Good.
With mentors. So it's creating that relationship part that
help.
we think is so important
Sure.
at 6th grade and 9th grade, in addition to giving them teachers who really have a background in the area that they are a strength area in that particular area.
The threat of proration, does that endanger the transition to the middle school?
No.
Okay.
It's just a matter of reconfiguring. We still will have teacher units, but it's just reconfiguring and looking at the space. This next year, we're only doing one middle school configuration. That's Bellingraph.
Sure.
So the schools that are going into Bellingraph will change to a 6A configuration. And that's about 294 sixth graders
Okay. Good deal.
out of about 2,500.
Sure. Now, you mentioned dropout rates. The school system recently partnered with the Public Affairs Research Council of Alabama. What has PARCA, that's the acronym
Right.
they're better known by, what have they decided we need to do to help stem this tide of dropouts?
Well, I can't wait to hear that.
Oh,
we don't
okay,
get it.
so we're still waiting.
We're still waiting. We don't get it back in supposedly the end of March or April, and it's supposed to give us data about what's happening specifically with our dropouts. What kind of preventions can we put in place? This is starting like in kindergarten. So we're pretty excited, and what we plan to do with that study is work on their recommendations over the summer and put programs in place that will address what they're saying our gaps are or some of our needs. But it's a systematic way of looking at our dropouts and what can we do to prevent it. And this district hasn't done that before. So we're pretty excited about what we think the potential information we're going to receive.
Sure. I guess there has been some sort of a sociological analysis that links dropping out to college with under-earning for the rest of your life and
That's right.
and other social ills as
That's
well.
right. If you drop out of high school, you're going to earn about $260,000 less over your lifespan that you would have earned. And keeping in mind that only about 20% of the jobs actually are college degree requirements, but you have all those other post-secondary degree options that are out there, which is why the career academies are so important. Because about 65% of our kids can find jobs in those areas and make very good incomes.
Right.
But we aren't capturing those. We aren't capturing the post-secondary 2-year and the college applicants like we should.
Is there a way to identify candidates most likely to drop out as early as third or fourth grade, or it's not that early?
I think kindergarten. According to the Parker study, he's going to give us information from kindergarten. So we're pretty excited about that because, you start some patterns, you see them in kindergarten. Now, this isn't part of the study, but this is part of my experience.
Sure.
That, I would have kids in kindergarten that already had attendance problems, who were already getting there late to school.
Sure.
I mean, you can see some habits that when you are a 5-year-old that are going to exasperate if you don't correct those. But this would be an objective study, so I can't wait to see what he's going to bring back for us.
Well, now, speaking about the importance of early education, the state superintendent, Dr. Joe Morton, is giving you big-time kudos for your pre-K program. Tell us what is the pre-K program, what does it entail, and why is Dr. Morton giving Montgomery such credit and applause?
Okay. Well, first of all, the pre-K program, and glad you mentioned that, is actually a preventive dropout mechanism.
Indeed.
And most people don't make that connection. Because when we have kids coming in who are non-readers and they can't read, those are the kids that more than likely are going to continue to struggle if we don't help them early on. So the pre-K program is that intervention program that we need. For Montgomery and surrounding school districts, you have lots of programs that are trying to do this. In our case, we had Success by 6, we had Head Start, we had Title, we had the Office of School Readiness. And when I arrived, what was interesting is that even though they were meeting and talking, we weren't working consistently together. And the reason I think he's bringing this up is we are now using the first-class standards that have been recognized across the country as being standards that are #1 in the country. I brought all these people to the table. We sat down and said we are all going to work together. All of our teachers are going to have the same training, and we're going to use the same assessment too. So it doesn't matter if your child's in Head Start or Success by 6.
Sure.
We all are going to have the same training. We all are going to be assessed because all those kids come to Montgomery Public Schools.
Right.
For us, that was crucial because we want our teachers, regardless if they're our teachers or Head Start teachers, to be working on the same skills and the same standards. And that's why he's talking about that. That's a big step because we're saying this is important, and we all are going to be working on it. And not only that, we all are going to be training. We all are going to be assessing kids with the same tool. So when they come to school and Johnny was here and he couldn't read or couldn't recognize sounds, we know that because we're using the same kinds of tools. And the Office of School Readiness is going to help us implement that assessment because we don't have the staffing to do that.
Sure.
So we've set up some things that utilize other resources that we didn't have. So I think that's why he's talking, and we moved from 6 programs to 22.
I was about to ask you, you have expanded
We've
the
we've
range.
expanded it, and that still only serves about 16 or 17% of the 4-year-olds in Montgomery. But for us, that was a huge leap, and that funding came from grants and federal funding. It's none of our school money, so we were really creative in expanding those programs. And that's kind of what we're going to have to do in the future because obviously our school money might not be there for that.
Sure, but now the downside of relying on grants is they're not permanent and they're very, very iffy. Are there drawbacks to creating such a valuable program as pre-K, knowing that if the grants expire, we might lose out?
Well, I guess the part of it is that we do have it, and the governor and is aware of these, and I'm hopeful that we're going to sustain that funding because we really need to keep these programs in place. And as I said, all the research says that you want to put the money up front for prevention and not wait until kids are dropping out and incarcerated in corrections. This is a proven dropout prevention step for kids. So I would hope that the powers that be that make funding decisions hear this because most of the funding is renewable that we're involved in right now. So I'm really hopeful that this is going to be maintained for years to come.
A little bit earlier we mentioned what's going on in schools in India and other places. Have other countries of the world embraced pre-K as part of their normalized curriculum?
Yes, they have. Actually, I'm not sure if you're familiar with this video, but there's a video that's called Did You Know on YouTube. But China actually started screening kids as early as 3 and investing in them. And they're a little bit more selective, which I don't philosophically agree with. But they are investing as early as 3 and making sure those kids they pick have, most of them have a second language by the time they're 10.
Right.
So they're really invested in upfront education and languages. We really are a little behind in both of those areas in the United States.
Well, if I'm the parent of a toddler, are there things that I should be doing, I mean, even 2-3 years ahead of my child going to kindergarten to help get him or her prepared so the teacher has something to work with, or not?
Yes, there are. Research tells us that before your child is ready to read, they have to have at least 1,000 books read to them. So as a parent, the best thing you can do for your child is to read to them. Read to them, explain what's going on in the book, point out things. Even if you think the child doesn't understand it, you know, about 50% of their brain is developed by the time they're 5.
Sure.
So you really want to give them as much exposure to books and knowledge and just identifying things that you can in the environment, because language is what really distinguishes kids as they go forward. It's that language processing.
Sure.
So reading, taking them out, even if parents don't have a lot of money, if you're taking your child to a zoo or walking through the park, pointing out trees and benches and flowers and anything else that you can explain to your child is a good thing. Ask them questions.
Good deal.
Just really talk to them.
The brain development is
critical.
Is critical at that
And
time.
it's crucial. And they're like little sponges.
Sure.
Their little brain just zaps in everything.
Yeah, sometimes they absorb stuff we might not want them to,
That's
but
right.
that's okay.
That's right.
Let's switch to the other end of the student experience.
Okay.
You're offering more advanced placement courses this
That's right.
year. Why is that a good thing?
Because we have to offer increased rigor in our curriculum. We want to make sure that we offer the challenge that kids need. what I'm most pleased about is the increase in the numbers of kids that are taking AP classes.
Now, explain that. You take a stricter, more complex course, and then at the end of the year you get tested in it. Is that correct?
Yes. At the end of the year, you have the option to get tested in it.
Okay.
And if there's a scoring range from 1 to 5. And if you score 3 or above, you are given college credit for that particular course that you've taken in high school. So for parents, that's a savings in terms of a course that your child will not have to take when they go to college. But even for kids who don't end up taking that test or don't pass the test, in my opinion, it still prepares you better for college.
Sure.
But because it gets you ready for that kind of rigor that you're going to have in college. So I definitely encourage kids to do that. But the other part that I really like is that the teacher training. Our teachers were trained in techniques and strategies to increase rigor in the curriculum. In my opinion, that's good training for all teachers. So we just have to make sure that that trickles throughout our curriculum. But I think that kids sometimes self-select and think they can't take classes that they really can.
Right.
And our task here is to encourage kids to take that challenge.
And what are some of the offerings that you can take?
You can take AP math, science, literature, history. There's a whole range of courses that you can take. We've gone from, I believe, 11 AP courses to, I think, 31 this year.
Wow.
So we've extended it significantly, and also we're extending it down into the middle school. Because the reason we're doing that is you need to prepare these kids earlier. It doesn't start just in high school.
Sure.
Preparation starts in middle and elementary, but definitely in middle school where we're struggling with that gap in curriculum. My belief is that sometimes people think that rigor means that it's a harder course and kids aren't going to like it. That's not the case. I think rigor often makes it more challenging, but sometimes it makes it more interesting too.
Sure.
So I think it's a way of looking at how you present AP courses.
Now, there are a lot of high school sophomores and juniors looking at this interview right now and saying, well, sure, if Superintendent Thompson tells me to take this AP course, it will make me more knowledgeable, but if I get a lower grade in it than in the normal geometry, could it impact my ability to get accepted into the college of my choice?
It could. I mean, I think getting a lower grade is always a concern, but I guess you have to balance that with the fact that this is the level that you're going to be doing when you're in college. Do you want to give that a try now and see where you are? And I would say, yeah, you do. You know, and really push yourself to see that where you are and where you stand in terms of, I want to go to college. These are kind of college prep courses. Is it worth for me to take this and really push myself? I think you should.
Okay.
And is there a chance that you might get a slightly lower grade? There is. But you might get a slightly lower grade even if you didn't take the AP courses.
Do the colleges, the admission offices at the colleges look at the transcripts to say, oh, well, Burdell took AP Trig, so the B that he got is equivalent to an A in ordinary trig, or not necessarily?
But it depends on the different colleges.
Sure.
But I think they consider the fact that you're taking a more difficult course. And what they're looking at now, too, is a portfolio approach. So it's not just the grades. It's also looking at what the student has done outside of that. You know, the volunteer hours, the commitment, the work experiences. So they're really looking at students who are pushing themselves, have taken some AP courses.
Sure.
But it's the portfolio is definitely coming into forefront for our seniors. And when, you know, up until 5 or 6 years ago, you only heard of that for, you know, college students.
Right.
So colleges are really looking at it in a more creative way because I think sometimes your students, when you're most resilient, are those who take risks and challenge. So I think colleges are looking at who they're admitting in a little different way.
Sure. Well, speaking of making our Montgomery students more attractive to colleges, I've heard the term international baccalaureate mentioned. Tell us what does IB mean, and why is that something that our students could benefit from?
Well, the International Baccalaureate is a pre-college program, but it's a national and internationally accredited program that's been around for a significant number of years. This program starts in the 11th grade, is considered even more challenging than the AP courses. And what I think it could offer our kids is just a different level of challenge. And it's one that I think Montgomery students deserve. It's also one that if we open a new school on the east side, or that I would really like to see us have that as an option in a school. And it would be in a regular school, kind of like the academies. And students, there's certain qualifications to get into this program. But let's say you're a military family and you're moving from place to place.
Right.
That still carries with you if you go to another town that has that program. You don't lose that credit. So in that sense, it's really good for families that are mobile. It's really good for parents who really want that extra tier of challenge for kids. We're trying to offer kids in Montgomery that full continuum, which is why we're doing the career academies. We have career tech, we have career academies, we have AP, and now we're talking about International Baccalaureate, the full continuum.
Now, would the IB program be similar to Loveless, where you have to enroll through the magnet lottery, or it would be open to anyone who thinks they are up to the challenge?
I would have this program open to anyone across the school district that thinks they're up to the challenge. There would be certain criteria to get in,
Of course.
but it wouldn't be specific to just that school. If you were a student, let's say in the new high school, it would still be open to students across the district. And that's the way it's worked in many, many districts. And I think that would work well in terms of the challenge that we're offering for kids and the opportunity. So if you were going to JD or Lee, you still could apply for an IB program.
Sure. Now, you mentioned the term academies, and you mentioned the two that are going to be at Carver. What are these academies? And it sounds like they are specialized curricula that will help you be successful in a profession of your choice.
Right. There are 7 career academies. Actually, this was an initiative that was started before I arrived, but I'm very pleased with it because what it does, it's like a school within a school. Students enter these career academies in 9th grade, and they start taking courses that are related to their content area, whether that be IT, technology, or the culinary area, which might involve more science that people might be aware of. They travel as a cohort, which is a small group of students. Let's say we're taking about 30 students every year for these different academies.
Sure.
They would travel 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th, and 12th. There's a pattern of pathway of classes that they take along with their cores, but their extra electives are all related to their career academy. So when they finish about 11th and 12th grade, they start taking internships. They start having apprenticeships, summer jobs that are related to their specific career academy. You also have dual enrollment options. So if you were somebody who wanted to be a certified or licensed practical nurse, after 10th grade, you could start taking courses, and when you graduate from high school, you could have a high school diploma and your certification.
Wow.
So without your parents paying anything for it.
Sure. Now, are there some academies where you can just sidestep the collegiate level, or
well,
the
classes that you're taking for this LPN or certified nursing, you're taking them
well,
jointly.
certainly nurses, we want them to
right,
go to college.
That's right, but that's right. But this is a 2-year degree before that one.
Right.
So you're taking them at Trenum and other places. So it's in collaboration with that. So that dual enrollment part is you're taking them jointly when you're in high school and you're taking some college level courses. But you're dually enrolled because you get credit in both places.
The Advanced Manufacturing Academy,
Yes.
can I transfer straight from that or transition straight from that onto a high-paying job, or I still need to go to some sort of program to get me even more attractive to employers?
It depends on what you're trying to do. There are some areas that you're going to be able to finish. Now, there's some things like, I'll say, welding and other things, that if you're taking some of these courses, you still might need to take some courses. I think it's a 2-year program. You might only need to take 1 year.
Right.
So it's a little less than what you'd have to do. So it really depends on the area that you're going in, that you're looking at. But certainly by doing this, you will have a leg up. It will be less time for you. And keep in mind that some of these summer jobs that you're going to have, or internships, are your future employers once you graduate.
Sure.
So you've already built that relationship. And you've also probably gotten a lot of the credits that you need. If it's a 2-year program, if you've earned at least a year,
Right.
you're already pretty advanced in terms of what you need to do to get this job that you need. So we're pretty excited about that.
Good deal. It sounds like the academies are using a lot of collaboration with the private sector. Are there other examples of MPS partnering with different entities in the community to benefit our students?
Yes, I would say that the Chamber and Maxwell partner with us in terms of our maintenance of our buildings and facilities. They did the plant, prune, and paint. Thousands of volunteers.
The what? The what?
Plant, prune, and paint.
Sure.
Yes.
Sounds like the to-do list that my wife has
That's
for me.
right.
but
Where they
that's-
went out and planted flowers at all the schools, painted, pruned, cut everything back before school opened. So all of our schools, they did all of our schools. This was with Maxwell.
Great.
Where they all beautification project. That was truly significant because we didn't have money to do that. We could not have done that. I mean, we had people out there painting curb, side curb where the buses come up. We had people pruning, planting, painting. It was really significant. And it makes a difference when you're a student going into a school and you know somebody has freshened it up for you.
Sure. Sure.
It really makes a good impression.
And it gives the students the impression, correctly,
Right.
I might add, that society places a value on education.
The other one that I would mention is with Maxwell. You know, they are considered the best training facility in the world.
Hands down.
Hands down. And this year we've been able to use their trainers to work with our administrative staff.
Oh, wow.
And we've had now 3 sessions with them. My administrative team prior to this had not ever been trained all together on one consistent model. We've done a survey on our leadership styles, what leadership means. We've reviewed Jim Collins, moving from good to great.
Sure.
Just working on learning what your style is. What's your leadership style in terms of your needing to know that before you can go out and work with other people. Those ratings have been high by the staff, like 97%, 95% satisfaction. So Maxwell has done a phenomenal job.
Good job.
Training our administrative team. And for us, it has not cost us anything. We would not have been able to afford this training. So we are extremely grateful, and the Chamber helped by with the site and providing food and treats for our staff. So we've really been treated very nicely by our partners.
I guess partners in education, they too have helped by bringing tutors into to the schools. How valuable is that? And also, I guess, how much of a commitment is required to be a tutor?
Well, we've actually, their emphasis for us this year has been more on mentoring.
Mentoring, of course.
And we targeted the middle school. And our goal was that we were going to have at least 60 kids that we wanted to have mentors. When I checked last, we were up to 57 kids who had mentors.
Here we go.
So it's huge. But once again, keep in mind it's middle school. Middle school is where our kids disengage and disconnect. So we wanted somebody that could connect with these kids, and the commitment is that it would be more than 1 year, that it wasn't something that you just started and you went away. So this middle schooler thinks, well, gee, I was important, but my mentor went away.
Right.
So it's a commitment that's more than a year. The time commitment kind of varies with the different mentors, but we were asking at least once a week, and that more than 1 year involvement. So we could not be happier with what we've seen so far. That relationship part is, remember, rigor, relevance, and relationships are those 3 R's that that I mentioned.
Those are the new 3 R's.
The new 3 R's. And this one hits really heavily on relationships. You know, we've got the rigor, and we've talked about the relevance, which is your career academies. Why are we here and why are we doing these things?
What does a mentor do if the mentor doesn't tutor?
The mentor really talks to the student, finds out how their life is going, might take them to some events. We've had people take their mentees to basketball games. They come to see them play their games.
Sure.
Because keep in mind, some of the kids that we're assigning mentors, there really isn't anybody in their life supporting them.
Right.
There isn't anybody necessarily saying, you're okay. I care about you. You know, I have time to be there for you. You know, because we have parents that are working multiple jobs and other things, just surviving. So it's nice to have somebody in the stands that's saying, you know, you got a basket. You know, I was there. I saw it. You know, you got an A on the test. You know, congratulations. You know, you passed your, you know, you did well in your science lab. you know, students need to hear that. They need to hear that what they're doing is important and that somebody cares. And these are people that are have interesting positions throughout the community.
Right. Do the mentors interact with the mentees' teachers or support staff at all, or it's just strictly adult to student?
To my knowledge right now, I think it's pretty much the student.
Mm-hmm.
They could if they wanted to, but I think we're developing the program to make sure we have, because you get into releases of information
Right.
and other kinds of student privacy issues. But we're trying to make sure that we have as much information for the mentor as possible.
One concept that we hear might be coming to the public school system is uniforms. What are the pros of adopting a uniform policy?
Well, first of all, we have 59 schools. Only 11 of them currently don't have uniforms.
So we're already almost there.
So
then.
you're already
okay.
almost there. That's the first thing. The second thing is I just think uniforms gives us a sense of pride, and it lets our students look like students. You know, we do have some issues with kids coming on our campus that are not part of our campus. You know, uniforms are an easy way for us to see who belongs in the building. You know, you have on your red shirt and khaki pants. But it really is, in my opinion, it also levels. We have about 65–70% free and reduced lunch in our school district. Kids come to school competing about who is wearing the best dress or the best shoes. This just takes away that whole thing. It equalizes it because we aren't there in a dress competition. Our students are there to learn. We want them to be there to learn. And ultimately, having uniforms will cost parents less.
Oh, I think there are a lot of parents that are
Yes.
high-fiving the television screen right now.
So, and you know, in terms of individuality and creativity, kids still have that opportunity on weekends and after schools. And the schools who do have uniforms have options. You know, if kids have earned it, like they've had good attendance, they give them an option to wear regular clothes.
Sure.
Or if they're on the honor roll, they get to wear, you know, one day of that month they get to wear what they want to wear. So there are different ways that you can incorporate options to wear different things other than uniforms, but it's usually based on something the kids have earned or some privilege. And if you notice, all the private schools in Montgomery already have uniforms also. So this isn't a new concept for many schools in our area.
Now, speaking of the security aspect of uniforms, I see now that you're adding tighter security measures at some of the high schools here in
Yes.
town.
You know, society is unfortunately a very dangerous place. And as we know, we have people who walk into places and shoot people for no reason. Often. We don't want our schools...
Not here in Montgomery
Not in Montgomery.
mercifully.
Not in Montgomery. But we want our schools to be safe. So it's just a way of making sure that we don't have people entering our building who are angry or upset and have other issues that would hurt our students. It also keeps us from having any students bringing any weapons into school that might be an issue. You know, I think that when you are angry, sometimes you make decisions that are not good. And when you don't have access to weapons or other dangerous paraphernalia, then you have to think about what you're going to do when you're angry. And we would like for our kids, when they come to school, parents send them to us, they expect that schools are going to be safe. We want to make sure that when they go home, we send them back the same way they came to us.
Sure, sure.
So it's just a safety precaution to make sure, as I said, most of our issues with weapons have been for kids entering our building who are not part of our population, because we have very good students who go to Montgomery schools.
Well, as a parent, I want my child to receive a great education, but I want her to be in a safe environment.
That's right.
It's neck and neck, I want to say.
Yeah, I would say when we look at parent issues, safety is one of the #1 issues that parents are concerned about. They want a safe learning environment. And so we're trying to create a safe learning environment and maintain that, in addition to bringing in that rigor that we talked about, and relationships, and relevance.
How many hours a week are you spending on the job, just out of curiosity? It's a lot more complex than I think people give it credit for.
Well, my job doesn't end. You know, unfortunately, I think for the last couple of weeks, I've had night meetings every week because we were doing the strategic plan or the zone hall meetings. So it doesn't end. And
those are night meetings with members of the public?
With members of the public that are scheduled. Then on the weekends, when I am any place in the community and people see me, they still approach me as a superintendent of school.
Sure.
And ask questions about what's going on. So my job really is a 24/7 job. It just never quite ends. Even when I think I'm incognito, it doesn't end.
Well, Ms. Thompson, I have really enjoyed our time together. I hope that we can get you to come back often to tell us about the great things going on in the Montgomery Public Schools. And best of luck. Keep up the great job.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.